Good evening from Murray Finlay on this New Year's Eve. For many of us, 1982 wasn't a happy year. A downturn in the economy and manufacturing resulted in local job losses. The continuing drought affected the rural communities, while 1982 also had its share of disasters and dramas. However, it wasn't all doom and gloom. And in this NBN News special, our senior reporters take a look at the major local events of the year. The first report is from Jim Sullivan.
Never more than in 1982 has it been demonstrated that the fortunes of Newcastle and the Hunter Valley are now inextricably linked with energy in one form or another. As the year progressed, the ups and downs of energy demand, both overseas and locally, were clearly reflected in developments which made news. Most obviously affected was the mining industry, which ended the year holding record stockpiles of coal. The mining year had started badly with a confrontation between miners and their employers over a new award.
Miners were back at work for only 2 days after their traditional Christmas break when mine owners began locking the gates because their employees refused to lift a series of work bans. The bans had been imposed towards the end of 1981 in support of a log of claims. The resulting dispute, labelled a lockout or a strike depending on who you talked to, lasted 2 weeks, but ended when the state government agreed to the extra $35 a week and a daily travelling allowance of $5.60. Other mine owners soon followed suit. Energy in another form was also hit by strikes, with Newcastle motorists having to queue more than once for petrol. In May, a dispute between the Transport Workers Union and the Service Stations Association caused problems. But the most serious petrol drought occurred in September, when the petrol flow from both Sydney refineries was cut by industrial disputes. Ultimately, key refinery operators had a head-on confrontation with the government and fellow unionists whose jobs were threatened by the lack of fuel. Eventually, the strikers were forced to back down and turn on the state's petrol supplies. Although something like 18 months late, twin pipelines vital to Newcastle's energy scene were completed in 1982. Constructed by AGL and Caltex, the Sydney to Newcastle gas and fuel pipelines had a joint construction cost of more than $140 million. Natural gas reached Newcastle in June via the pipeline, much to the relief of major industries which had been promised the cost-saving energy source as far back as December 1980. The computerised control centre installed by the Newcastle Gas Company is now handling something like 12 times the volume of gas sold by the company before the pipeline was completed. And predictions are that this figure will almost double again in the next decade. At the Caltex depot in Wickham, the fuel products pipeline also came to life. Diesel, super, standard petrol and aviation fuel can all be pumped through the one line and, by modern technology, effectively separated at the Newcastle end with little waste. The pipeline has virtually ended Newcastle's reliance on marine tankers. For the Electricity Commission, 1982 was a year of fluctuating fortunes. From a critical shortage of power as winter approached, a shortage which led to Energy Minister Lander making pleas for conservation of energy, the situation changed to one of virtual oversupply by the end of the year. Higher electricity prices prompted users to reduce consumption, and at the same time stages 1 and 2 of the giant Araring power station came online, adding 1,320 megawatts to the state grid. The Electricity Commission also officially slowed construction of the identical Bayswater power station. One reason for the slowdown in power station construction was the loss in April of a large potential customer, when BHP announced it would not build an aluminium smelter at Lochinvar. This followed BHP's failure to find another partner after the American-Japanese company Alumax withdrew from the project. The 200-hectare site purchased for the smelter was returned to the market.
Alongside falling demand for coal, mounting cost pressures surfaced in the mining industry, and resulting large-scale retrenchments on the south coast sent shivers through the valley's miners. A perceived threat to mining jobs in the Hunter created something of a division between those involved in the more efficient mechanised open cuts of the upper Hunter and the labour-intensive underground mines which are concentrated at the lower end of the valley. 2 older underground mines deemed uneconomic did in fact close.
Aberdare East, a coal and allied mine on the Cessnock field, worked its last shift on September the 24th. However, while it was the end of the mine, no jobs were lost. All employees were transferred to other coal and allied mines. A week later, the BHP-owned Burwood colliery at Dudley also closed, just 3 years short of its centenary. The last shift marked the end of a long family tradition for some miners, and the old pit was given a liquid wake at the adjoining bowling club. The former Burwood miners were also placed at other mines operated by BHP. However, the battle to prevent further closures that might mean job losses led to a ban on new projects, and the opening of the $170 million Ulan open cut was delayed. Eventually, mining unions in that area relented, and on October the 15th the mine was officially opened by the Premier. The mine's located at the end of the Sandy Hollow line. Originally begun 50 years ago, the legendary line had a history of stop-start construction by various governments, and it was private enterprise in the form of White Industries which finally completed the controversial link with Muswellbrook. The project cost the company $70 million and will be paid for by the state government in the form of freight rebates on coal carried from the Ulan mine. But while the Ulan open cut did begin coal production, a similar project near Muswellbrook stalled under the ban imposed by northern mining unions. At the $200 million Drayton open cut, overburden has been cleared and coal is there for the mining. But the northern mining unions will not allow the company to employ the necessary labour because, the unions say, in the present tight coal market, another new mine will only endanger jobs at existing mines. The company argues that this is not so and says the export contracts held by Drayton will be lost to other countries.
What we're talking about at Drayton is the long-term share of the export steaming coal that the Hunter Valley is going to get. And as such, it is a thing that is of concern to everyone in the Hunter Valley, and it's of concern to the miners themselves in the longer term as far as job security is concerned.
Newcastle's coal loading performance did improve dramatically during 1982, thanks to the introduction of weekend shifts at the loaders, fewer disputes, and the early completion of Port Waratah's third coal loader head. An individual port record was set, the Diang Glory taking out almost 92,000 tonnes of coal for the Pohang Iron and Steel Company in Korea. One message which came across loud and clear in 1982 was that overseas coal buyers will not tolerate any future delays in the shipment of coal from Newcastle. In a news special, I spoke to industry leaders in Japan, Korea and Hong Kong, and their comments leave no doubt about what Newcastle and the Hunter Valley must do to stay in the tough international coal market.
Well,
first of all, what they have to consider is to ensure the steady, reliable supplies of coal. And then also they have to make it sure that they'll supply the coal at reasonable prices.